Hey everyone, it's Tracy and Brian here to bring you another Flex Talk topic for the workplace. Today we're going to talk about something called attachment types. Now, if you've gone to some counseling, maybe you've heard of this, but many people are unaware of this idea that dates back all the way to the 60s and 70s. Here's the image we're going to be going through in this topic, and we want you to consider which one of these 4 attachment types you might be. Now, before we get into it, here's the big idea. Just like personality types or love languages, we all tend toward a particular attachment type, and being aware of your type helps you to identify your default tendencies in times of stress and conflict in the workplace.
So this is research that was done by John Bowlby, and learning and studying from the earliest of ages how kids attach to their caregivers. And so how those early attachments happened in our life really affects who then we become as adults and how we attach in our adult relationships and how we are at work and how we are as a leader. We're going to be measuring the idea of how avoidant you are in connection with others and how much anxiety you have in relationships with others.
All right, the first type can be found in that lower left-hand corner, the S. This is someone who has low avoidance and low anxiety, and we call them secure. You're someone who is good at forming strong bonds. You're someone who's comfortable with constructive criticism, and you're also probably task-oriented, and you like to get the job done.
Yeah, so this is a person that was raised in an environment from the youngest of age where they felt like they could form healthy connections. There was a trusting environment that they felt like their needs were met, they could explore and didn't fear that they would be unsafe or that they would feel unloved. And so as an adult then and in the workplace, this is an employee who is not afraid of making relationships. They're low on avoidance. They want to make good relationships. They're not afraid of people. They're also not afraid of constructive criticism because they have low anxiety. So their self-esteem is not wrecked when they have to get some constructive or more negative feedback on the job. And they're great at doing tasks because, again, they're not afraid of failure because they have that secure attachment. They've been reared in an environment from a young age where they felt safe to explore and to develop.
The second type is the V. It's up in the upper left-hand corner there. This is someone who has high avoidance and low anxiety. So they avoid close personal relationships. They usually probably prefer to work alone. And this is someone who tends to question leadership. This is the avoidant attachment type.
So this is a person, if you're thinking about in your office, that doesn't really want to get super close personally. They don't want to have a lot of conversation about personal life stuff. They just have a boundary. They just have some clear ways of how they want to interface with people and how they don't. They're likely going to be more interested in doing the tasks that are just one-on-one for themselves. They're not really into the group project thing. And the avoidant person is probably going to tend towards questioning processes and procedures a little bit because they're going to be pretty sure of the way they think things should be done. And they might buck against the system a little bit.
The third attachment type is the X in the lower right-hand corner. This is someone with low avoidance and high anxiety, and that makes them the anxious attachment type, someone who is preoccupied with being accepted, who relies on others to complete tasks, and someone who probably needs constant affirmation in order to stay focused.
So this is a person who probably was raised in an environment where there was maybe a question of level of acceptance, maybe a caregiver that had pretty high standards or would withhold affection if they didn't like the behavior that they saw. So this is anxious attachment, might be the employee who really thrives on being accepted. Like they can't stand it if somebody doesn't like them. When they feel like someone's giving them the cold shoulder, maybe that avoidant, more personality attachments type, they're going to really want to come after that person because they want to be accepted. They're not going to want to take on tasks without constant feedback. Am I doing it right? Is this what you're looking for? They just really need that affirmation, and they don't want to do things on their own. They want to make sure that it's being approved all along the way. That's more of the anxious attachment style.
And then finally, we have the D, the disordered attachment style. This is someone with high avoidance and at the same time, high anxiety. Someone who has a strong desire to be accepted, who has a strong desire to protect and isolate, and yet someone who's probably inconsistent in some ways and tends to vacillate.
So this is the most confusing one, so to speak, kind of by its name. It has the least amount of research really behind it, but it's basically a person that goes between the avoidant and the anxious attachment style. Sometimes, they really want the approval of people, but they also have this strong need to kind of throw up their arm and be arm's length from people. So sometimes they might be more like the anxious attachment type, where it feel like you're connecting and they want connection, and then other times you're going to feel like they're creating space and are closed off to you. So that's why we call this attachment style disorganized or disordered.
So again, for you today, we encourage you to consider which one of these attachment types seems to describe you the best. The S, the V, the X, or the D. And here's the key takeaway. Remember, being aware of your attachment type helps you to identify your default tendencies in times of stress and conflict. But we want to encourage you with this last thing. With practice, you really can learn to overcome your default and become more secure in your interactions, right? Because that S in the lower left-hand corner, that's obviously the one that seems to be the healthiest and is going to create the best leader and coworker for the workplace.
And again, the value of it is not only to understand yourself, like how you react internally to coworkers or to leadership, but it's also good for you as the leader to think about and understand someone else's attachment style and why they may react in different situations, especially in times of stress or conflict. So rather than that, their reaction be frustrating and something that just adds to conflict, let it be something that you use to empathize and understand them a little bit better so you know how to navigate through those relationships in the workplace.